You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
Everybody, of course, with the transfer portal in full swing right now, keeping an eye on what LSU might do in the portal. And I think everybody obviously is looking at defensive line. We've talked about a plethora of players already in the portal that LSU could be targeting. If you've missed any of that, you can catch it on demand at 1045ESPN.com or the AFR YouTube channel. I think maybe the most interesting thing I saw, though, was Tom Luginbill over at ESPN looked at the best landing spot for the top players in the portal. And he did have one of the players that he said the best landing spot was LSU, and it's Dayon Hayes. You ever heard of Dayon Hayes?
No.
Yeah, me either. But he's a senior who's transferring from Pitt, 6'3", 265-pounder, and he's an edge rusher. This one kind of confuses me a little bit. You never turn down pass rushers in football, right? The three most important positions: quarterback, the people that protect the quarterback, left tackle, the people that affect the quarterback, edge rusher. So if you have an edge rusher that wants to an elite edge rusher that wants to come to your program, awesome.
Yeah, you take him.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But is that really a need for LSU? I don't know that it is. Hayes last year had 45 tackles, 10.5 for loss, and 4 sacks. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's a good year.
LSU's most productive pass rusher last year was Harold Perkins, who had 13 TFLs and 5.5 sacks. So Perkins had a more productive year as a pass rusher last year than did Hayes. Mm-hmm. Different positions, though, now because Perkins is moving inside, as we well know. But even look at Braden Swinson. 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Savion Jones at 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Paris Shand at 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Deshaun Womack, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. You've got a lot of guys back. And while Hayes is more productive than all of the guys I just mentioned except for Harold Perkins, my question is, who do you take off the field? Like, Perkins could be inside, but if Hayes, let's say Hayes comes to LSU, are you going to replace Deshaun, or are you going to place Savion Jones or Braden Swinson among your starters?
No.
And
Womack is a freak too.
That's the really interesting thing, because when you look at your twos, Paris Shand looks great this offseason, the rotation in the spring, and then you mentioned Womack, who is a 5-star that they're very excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about Blake Baker at Missouri. So Blake Baker was the DC at Mizzou for 2 years, and each year he had a defensive end pop off. So in 22, Isaiah McGuire had 13 TFLs and 7.5 sacks. Okay, this was 2 years ago. He's 6'4", 266. He's the same size as Braden Swinson, who's 6'5", 269. It's basically physically the same guy. Mm-hmm. So, what's to say Braden Swinson wouldn't be able to have the same type of production McGuire did that year? They're a very comparable player. And then the one everybody knows from this past year is Darius Robinson from Missouri. So Darius Robinson, who's probably going to be a high NFL draft pick, had 14 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. Well, Darius Robinson is a big end. He's 6'6", 280. Well, so is Savion Jones, who's 6'5", 290. So, when I look at Robinson and Savion Jones, I'm like, Blake Baker has replicas of the two guys he had at Missouri the last 2 years who popped off. And by the way, you're throwing Harold Perkins into the mix. Again, I never want to say you don't look at a defensive end or an edge rusher. I just don't know that this is a need for LSU. On the interior, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you moved an offensive lineman to interior defensive line in the spring in Kimo Makanaioli, and he was taking reps with the ones. You got to go get starting caliber players on the interior of your defensive line. I just don't know the defensive end is what you're really looking for right now.
Of any of those guys you mentioned, could you kick them to the interior size-wise?
I mean, it's a good question, and I think there's packages where, even Brian Kelly said this, where there's going to be third down situations. Blake Baker said there's going to be third down situations where Perkins is playing on the edge, where he's going to rush the passer.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times where they take Parashand and kick him inside. And so you have like a NASCAR package with 4 edge rushers on the field and obvious passing downs when you want to get pressure. But I don't know, man. I'm not saying you turn down a guy that's a proven pass rusher, but 10.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks last year. It's not dramatically better than any of the guys LSU has. And you've got good depth there. Like, you've recruited and retained well there. Like, if you had lost Shand or Swinson or Jones in this offseason, it's a different conversation because you'd be just counting on young guys hoping they take the next step. But you got a bunch of veteran proven guys already. So I just saw it from Tom Lugan, Bill. I mean, I'd love to think there's some interior players that are going to be top players in the portal that are going to be projected to LSU. I just don't know that you need defensive ends projected to LSU right now.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.